Now it's time for Movie Friends with your hosts Michelle and Seth. We're talking film without pretension. We're finding cats that are unexpected. We'll watch a movie, film, or schmovie, and we want you to join our journey. So subscribe and share this podcast, or this might just be the last of the Movie Friends. We're movie friends. We want to be your movie friends.
Welcome to New Release Review, part of the Movie Friends podcast. My name is Seth. Today we're talking about Black Phone 2. Not the, I should note, just Black Phone 2 from 2025, directed by Scott Derrickson. Now, we will be discussing spoilers throughout this entire episode, so if you haven't seen Black Phone 2, please turn this off. Don't rob yourself of a great experience. Maybe great experience is a little extreme, but go watch the film and then come back and listen. My guest for today is Shawn Hunt. He's a filmmaker, artist, and movie lover, and we're here to talk about Scott Derrickson, Ethan Hawke, Snow, Ice, and I'm excited to have you here with us, Shawn. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
I guess what I'll say right off the bat is I liked Black Phone 2 a lot more than I liked the Black Phone. I kind of felt like I was crazy when that one came out because everyone was like, this is so great. I was like, I don't really enjoy this at all. How did you feel about the first one?
I actually enjoyed it. I was a fan of Derrickson's Sinister, and I thought this one was kind of an interesting spiritual companion in a way, no pun intended.
Right.
But no, I haven't read the Joe Hill story that it's based on, but I did. I actually enjoyed the movie. I thought Ethan Hawke actually brought the goods as the grabber. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it.
I also liked Ethan Hawke in the first one. I guess I didn't love like the balloon part of it, I guess. Yeah.
The actual grabbing.
Yeah, the actual grabbing. It felt like Scott Derrickson was saying like, hey, you know how easy it used to be to kidnap kids? Man, those were the days.
Yeah.
And but I did find Ethan Hawke to be scary and intimidating. Osgood Perkins had a really good quote this year. He talked about movies as something that you eat versus something that you beat. And that really resonated with me because I was like, yeah, I want to be able to like turn my brain off and just experience something for what it is instead of sitting there the whole time being like, well, that doesn't make sense. But with the Black Phone, I just could not. I couldn't. I was like, I had just so many questions about like, well, how does this work and where are they calling from?
Yeah, I think, and I should probably state, I was probably around, maybe just slightly younger than the main character in the movie. And I grew up in as a kid in the 70s. So that whole stranger danger, kidnapping fears, it was very real for us growing up in that period of time. People coming into the classroom to tell you not to talk to strangers and what to do and that sort of thing. So I think it kind of tapped into that for me. Also, I could relate to that era because this was essentially, my childhood in a strange, well, minus the encounter with the grabber, but I mean, just in terms of, and being bullied in school and that sort of thing. I mean, there were certain things about it that I think I related to. And I think some of that also stemmed a little bit too from Derrickson himself, because I'm not familiar with the Joe Hill story, but how he set it in Denver where he grew up. I think he kind of put certain little stamps on it of his own.
Right.
But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I think the part of it that actually didn't quite work as well for me was the actual phone calls with the ghosts. Even though I thought it was well done, my thing is, and I've noticed this as I've gotten older, and maybe because we've been beaten over the head with it over the last 10 years or so, with ever since the success of films like Insidious and
Hmm.
Paranormal Activity. I'm very burnt out on ghosts, very burnt out on ghosts. But I thought they at least did it here in a creative fashion. So
Yeah.
I was okay with it. But actually I think unlike, yeah, I think the kidnapping aspect and him being stuck in the basement, I thought that was the most compelling aspect of it for me.
Yeah. And Hawk, like you said, he really does bring the goods.
Hmm.
We know that he's worked with Scott Derrickson before. I think that some people were surprised to see him, Hawk take this turn in the Black Phone.
Hmm.
But he was in Sinister, and I just watched that movie for the first time within the last 6 months.
Oh, really?
And oh yeah, it scared the crap out of me. Like
Yeah.
that it was great.
I think the first two-thirds of that film are the best of any studio horror film so far this century. I think the
Wow.
only I think the only qualm I have with it is the third act, and it's not that the third act is bad. It's just that once you learn about who Mr. Boogie is,
Mm-hmm,
uh,
mm-hmm.
then he kind of loses some of that mystique,
Right.
and which is why the Sinister Two was, well, what's the point? We already know who he is, and he's not as scary. I kind of call that I call it the Halloween 2 effect. It's sort
Mm-hmm.
of like the when you start doing horror sequels and you start learning more about the antagonist or taking away the mystery, the
Mm-hmm.
mystique, then they start to lose some of their power, which we
Yep.
could get into with Black Phone too. But um, I think that was my the only qualm I had with Sinister. But yeah, the first two are absolutely chilling. Very well done.
Yeah, yeah. We watched my wife and I we watched horror together, and there were two movies that we had never seen and heard so much about. One was Sinister, and then the other one is it's the one with the very famous jump scare with the red guy behind Patrick Wilson.
Oh, Insidious.
Yeah, Insidious. So we
Okay.
watched Insidious first, and we were like, this is the worst movie we've ever seen. It's so silly. And literally we were like laughing by the end. And we went into it kind of like, oh man, this is one of the big ones people talk about. It's gonna be scary. And then we went into Sinister, and I think because Insidious, and I don't know why those were two paired in my mind, but because Insidious was just such a letdown, I think we kind of went into Sinister unprepared, and then we're just like
Yeah.
totally floored by how good it was. But anyway, yeah, Derrickson, I think that he's got a lot of talent. Like I really
Mhm.
enjoyed his Doctor Strange. I thought that was a nice breath of fresh air during the first Marvel movies. It was different.
It was.
Sinister's good. He's got like some great stuff and then some real duds in there, but I'm still interested in him as a filmmaker. And like I said, I liked the Black Phone 2 a lot more than the first one. So I think sometimes leaving things alone is better,
Hmm.
But I would be totally down for a Black Phone 3. I don't know how they would do it, but
I heard they're down for it too, so we're
yeah.
probably going to get it.
Yeah, I don't care. Just be like Satan unleashes the grabber every 4 years. Whatever. Who cares? That's tell me that and I'm done. And to one of your points earlier about seeing the monster and learning more, I thought that was
Hmm.
maybe this movie's biggest weakness. We get two of the biggest, longest, and maybe most criminal, boring exposition dump scenes in this movie, as if it's like, okay, are you with us? Are you following? Here's what's happening. Here's some more information. And now we're going to do the next 15 minutes of the movie. And I really didn't think that it needed any of that because in the trailer for this,
Hmm.
you hear the grabber and Finn talking, and the grabber says, you of all people should know that dead is just a word.
Hmm.
And I immediately was like, oh, yeah, I don't need to know how he's back. We established in the first movie that dead people can talk to Finn through a phone, so I'm in. Like I'm kind of sold. Um, anyway.
No, and I yeah, actually, I think. when I heard the announcement they were doing a sequel, my first question was, how are they going to do this?
Yeah.
Obviously, spoiler alert, he dies in the end of the first movie.
Right.
And then I thought, well, yeah, the whole movie dealt with uh, ghosts and everything. And so, yeah, it does fit into that perfectly in terms of if you're going to do a setup for a sequel.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, yeah, I think I do agree with you about the exposition. I do think the film is a little long in the tooth.
Mm.
I mean, and truthfully, you don't even really see the grabber until almost halfway into the movie.
Yeah.
You have a few quick scenes or flashes of him, but then as far as his like actual appearance in the film, it almost comes, it seemed, at the halfway point. And I should note, it's I watched this a week ago, so if my memory's a little faulty, but yeah, but in a way, I felt like that also benefited because when he does appear on screen, he does have a lot of magnetism and
Hmm.
gravitas to him once he's actually there because we haven't been inundated with him throughout the whole movie. So
Yeah, and I mean it's creepy enough. Setting is creepy. You get little ghost kids throughout. You're getting the
mhm.
dreams, and so there's enough to keep you engaged in terms of spooks and scares before he shows up, which I thought that was kind of smart. But we literally have talk about on the nose. We literally have dead children spelling things out for us.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
um, so yeah, like I would have liked a little bit more mystery. I didn't necessarily need to know exactly how every single aspect of this works.
yeah.
But yeah, on Ethan Hawke, I guess we'll just start with him. I found him, like you said, just magnetic in this movie.
Hmm.
Towards the beginning, Finn is out back smoking a joint, and they're just talking to each other
Hmm.
very calmly and coldly, and it's not a long moment, but I like sat up in my seat and I was like, "Oh my god, wait, this is awesome! Please tell me that this is what's happening." And then it
Yeah.
never happens again, which is a bummer. But um, I loved everything. Him talking about hell. I didn't write down many notes for this movie, but when he delivers the line, uh, "I am an endless pit of sin," I was like, "Oh my
Hmm.
god!" Like I'm bone chilled right now. Yeah, how did you find him in this one versus like the first one?
I think um, there is this. He's obviously much angrier in this film,
Mm,
based on how he ended up in the first movie, and he's obviously it could have just been called Grabber's Revenge.
mm-hmm,
Um, but yeah, no, I mean, he has he did seem even darker in this film if that was even possible, and we obviously delving into some of his previous murders, which I actually thought was an interesting way to go about it, rather than say having him running around and still say a la Freddy killing kids somehow in the present or
right,
in the time period of the movie, which is 1982 in this one.
right.
Um, but yeah, no, he's Hawk really brings his A game. I thought, you would think an actor of his caliber would probably be somebody that would look down on taking you know a role like this, but
Mm-hmm.
he really gives it his all. So
Yeah, and I liked how this one was much more focused when when we introduced the camp,
mhm.
and then it's
The
like, okay,
Jesus
we're gonna,
camp,
yeah, yeah, the Christian camp, where apparently you can just show up and say, I have a job here.
yeah,
Like, I thought, okay, yeah, sure, camps always need more counselors and they'll get hired there, but to just be like, we're here, we're the ones,
yeah,
we're the counselors in training, it's like, uh, sure, sure.
yeah, and then crashing there immediately after arriving, But at least the camp was run by Bob from Hateful Eight.
Okay,
Uh,
so
so I was happy.
yeah, we arrive in a snowstorm. Okay. can't see, have to be led in by somebody, blah, blah, blah. And then this dude starts helping them. And I thought to myself, oh, that's really funny. Scott Derrickson is doing a kind of nod to the Hateful Eight and this idea of like being trapped somewhere by a
Yeah.
storm, small cast of characters, boiling pot. Oh, that's so funny. They really. And then I was like, he really sounds like Bob. Wow. And then I was like, I think that is Bob.
It is, which is funny too, because Hateful Eight, of course, is a sort of loose Western remake of The Thing with John Carpenter or with Kurt Russell,
Yep.
even in tow. But
Yep.
I'm actually a big fan of Hateful Eight. I think it's a great. It's actually my second favorite of his.
It's my favorite.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh yeah, kind of by
So we're in
far
good
it's my
company.
favorite. Yeah,
Yeah.
because to me, it being a period piece, it kind of makes Tarantino step back from his whole reference thing
Yeah.
and like constant needle drops. There's a few throughout. I know there's a Jack White song early on, but he's forced to just be in that cabin and in that time period and doing what he does best, which is the long dialogue scenes eventually leading to violence. So I put Hateful Eight as his best work because he can't rely on his bag of tricks,
Right. Yeah.
So
No, I totally agree.
yeah, it's like proof, and I'm kind of half and half on Tarantino, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's proof that he can, if forced to,
Yeah,
make
and
a really good movie.
he's the only one that can get away with filling his scenes with dialogue. I mean, and I think there was in the '90s seemed to be all these Tarantino imitators,
Sure.
and
Oh
they would
yeah.
just try to throw in all the snappy dialogue, but they didn't actually seem to get how his dialogue was informing us of character or story or setting things up in a way, even subtly. Yeah, but he's one of those few that can you just riveted by the actual dialogue and how it's playing out and how it's building the tension. Um, but yeah, no, I was thinking it was a strange scenario as far as Black Phone too, how they would end up in this camp, in the middle of a blizzard and finding themselves, you know, crashing out with people that they didn't know, kind of thing. But I thought the camp itself, though, was an interesting location. It is isolated, as opposed to the first movie, which is smack dab in the middle of the suburbs.
Right.
Um, and so it also, I don't know if this was the intent, but it did kind of sort of have a Friday the 13th vibe, being set on a camp out in the middle of
Right.
nowhere.
Right.
And let me ask you something, and I don't know, this is just something that was going through my mind, but they have this little lake right there where the cabins are, and smack dab in the middle is a phone booth near the lake, which is frozen over. And I kept watching, or I kept looking at the scene, and I thought, did it not look to you like they must have shot that in the volume where they shoot Mandalorian and everything? Because it just had this kind of artificial look, but the way, they had it
Totally.
at night and, yeah.
Yeah,
But,
totally. All of the lake stuff looked the worst, I will say.
yeah.
Which we're doing a lot of cool. I loved the vibe of the dorms, like the bunk with
Hmm.
all the kids writing their names all over. I loved the color and the light that the heaters
Yes, I was going to say the same
brought
thing.
to
Yeah.
those rooms.
Yeah.
And the designs, the heating element in every one of the heaters is like they're not uniform, which is
Yeah.
kind of silly, but it made it.
Which it's offsetting too, off-putting at the same
Yes,
time.
yeah.
It kind of,
It made
yeah.
it odd and a little scarier. And so I thought that they did a lot of creative, practical things. But
Hmm.
then you marry it with like anytime someone's standing at a lake and it's like, oh, this looks so bad. Which, obviously you can't endanger people's lives by
Right.
actually having them. It's like when they had like the Zamboni, the truck, and the horse and carriage all on the lake just together. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know a lot about lakes, but maybe spread these out one
Yeah,
at a time. I don't know, man. This seems real dangerous.
yeah. No,
But
well, they
yeah,
got
and
their
then
use out of it.
when Mando, played by Damian Bashir, who we were mentioning is Bob in Hateful Eight, when they first ask him about the payphone and he says, "Oh, that hasn't worked in 10 years." I thought to myself, "Well, why hasn't it worked in 10 years? It's not like this is taking place in, the year 2005 where, well, actually 2005, I guess payphones still were. It's not like it's 2025 and payphones are not kept up. This is prime payphone time. And then two, if it doesn't work, why is it still there? Why would you get rid of it?"
Yeah, I wondered about that with like modern like Gen Z audiences and stuff. Not really understanding what payphone or understanding payphones, of course, but just that whole vibe of them and everything. Like when he's
Mm-hmm.
walking by earlier in the film, and the phone's ringing when he's out in front of a convenience store, and he picks it up and tells him he's not interested, and hangs it back up. And
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, I kind of wonder because that is obviously a dated aspect, but it's something I wonder how modern Gen Z audiences would relate. And it's crazy to think because these were all normal everyday things for me growing up, and I'm sure for you as well. But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um,
I remember, being told, don't stick your finger into the coin return on a payphone because people put dirty needles in there. I don't know if you ever heard that one,
no, I hadn't
but
heard that one.
that was a fear that was instilled in me as a child because as you're a kid, you run up and put your finger in each coin return and maybe you'll get a dime. It'll be the best day of your life.
Yeah, that was a lot of money back then. You could buy Star Wars cards or something with them.
Absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I thought you were going to say stick your finger in the electric socket. And I was like, well, no, that's still relevant today.
that too. Yeah, that we were also knowledge too. I thought about that recently, in terms of future generations because
Hmm.
technology has just progressed so fast,
Yeah.
so far so fast, where you'd have films with people on telephones from the time the telephone was invented until the mid 2000s. We still had
Hmm.
landlines. Like that technology pretty much stayed the same. Phones changed, but it was still, you had a phone on your wall or you had a payphone. And now that idea is just gone in like 10 years time. So I was thinking about the Matrix because
Hmm.
when the Matrix came out, and we watched it, and the characters in the Matrix have to find a phone to connect to the internet, basically. That made sense to us because we had to use a phone line to connect to the internet. And I
Yeah.
was like, in
Yeah.
like 10 more years, no one born is going to know why the characters in the Matrix need to get to a phone. They'll be like, what sense does that make?
But didn't they also say that they chose that time period in the Matrix because it was the peak of civilization?
Right, right. Yeah. The height of
Yeah.
civilization was
Yeah. That's
1999.
a scary thought.
Yeah, yeah. Although, you know what? Looking back on the last 25 years, I think, okay, we could probably turn the clocks back to just before 9/11 and things would be okay.
I think actually, and it's been a bit since I've seen The Matrix. I have seen it several times, but it's been a bit. But I seem to recall, didn't his identification or driver's license or whatever say it expired on 9 September 11th, 2001?
Yes, I can't remember if it's his ID or some paper, but at some point, yes, there is
Yeah,
a September
that's
11th.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's crazy.
So we're heading to a camp, and like you said, it does give us Friday the 13th vibes. I thought, okay, so now we'll watch the grabber killing all these kids because they'll be in a place with a bunch of kids. But no, they don't do that. And then
No.
this has also been getting a lot of comparisons to Nightmare on Elm Street because
Hmm.
now the grabber is coming through dreams. So honestly, I thought both of those kind of, I don't know if nod is too light of a term. Rip-offs. I don't know how far you would want to go, but I kind of liked it. I was like, you know what? I like Ethan Hawke. I like this character. Sure, whatever. Do something stupid. I don't care.
Well, it's funny because Jason Blum of Blumhouse has been making all these been making it known how badly he wants both the rights to Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on
Right.
Elm Street, and
Right.
which they kind of both sort of play out in this movie. But uh, I almost feel like, well, what's the point in trying to get the rights to Freddy Krueger when he's basically, or with the grabber and with these Black Phone movies, you've kind of created a sort of alternate Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, here,
Mm-hmm.
because the similarities are very strong. The scene when he's tossing Gwen around and she's spinning in the air, of course, that immediately takes you back to the original Nightmare when Tina's up on the ceiling, and
It's the
um,
best. The best.
yeah, and I
Still.
actually enjoyed it, and I thought it was very well. It was very well orchestrated. I bring up the Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 remake, and without trying to get into a long tangent about it.
Sure. Sure.
But I think when it comes to reinventing Freddy Krueger, the 2010 remake actually, in the first hour, I had, other than replicating Tina's death
Mm-hmm.
almost to the T, I thought there was some interesting ideas that were really coming forward. One of them being potentially Freddy was innocent, the other being
Mm.
Freddy was possibly a repressed memory. But the problem was, as I was sitting there watching it, I knew in the back of my mind they're going to play it safe. Freddy's just going to be he's going to be the same basic Freddy that you know
Right.
we got before, his backstory and everything. Although, again, I could go on a long tangent about how they really have to spell out what he did in the past, which was
Right.
totally unnecessary and disturbing.
Yeah.
Uh, but
It's funny that you bring this up because I literally just watched this movie last night.
oh, did you? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And honestly, just as an aside, I actually thought Jackie Earle Haley was a great choice for the role. I think the
Mm.
problem he faced was A, the script, and B, the most restrictive makeup, trying to
Yeah.
make him look like an actual burn victim who can't move their faces.
Yeah.
They have very little to no expression,
Right.
which is the worst thing you can do to an actor.
Right.
I think they even went back and tried to CG enhance his mouth moving or something at one point because it looked so bad. With a character like Freddy Krueger, I feel like it's open to some possibly new and cool spins and twists that they could have done with him. Uh, and that was kind of my biggest regret with that movie. And with Black Phone 2, I almost feel like now they've kind of, in an essence, done sort of a loose remake of Nightmare on Elm Street with the first two films taken as a whole.
Right.
It's like this one decided to start off with the prequel we never got of Freddy's backstory,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and now we've transitioned into Freddy Krueger in the dream world kind of thing.
Right.
And
Right.
so, from a Nightmare on Elm Street, as someone who grew up during the heyday and rise to pop culture that Freddy Krueger had, I very much enjoyed that vibe, and I'm sure some might just say, "Oh, this is just like you said, a rip off." But I thought it was. I looked at it as kind of like a loose reimagining of Freddy in a way. So it
Yeah,
worked
I
for me.
agree. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was fun. I thought all of that was fun. I think the movie has problems. Like I said, you're giving us two movie stopping exposition dumps.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what your movie is.
Yeah.
You don't do that. But all of the dream stuff, that was all great. And you mentioned, how great it is to see someone like try to do something different. As a
Mhm.
fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child, I
You
very
are.
much appreciate. Oh yeah, yeah. My Nightmare on Elm Street rating ranking is very different than most people. Like everyone's like, Dream Warriors is the best. I'm like,
Yeah.
Dream Warriors is the worst. Dream Child is where it's at. Um, but I like that with kind of all of the big franchises when they try to do something different. I mean, Chucky, how much new life they breathed into it when they really leaned into like Bride of Chucky and stuff like that.
Right. The
It's
humor.
very different, and you might not like it, but it did give that character a different direction and a new
Hmm.
life. For Friday the 13th, I'm a big fan of Jason Goes to Hell. I know people don't like that one, but I thought, the idea of, I won't spoil that movie, but just what they do different with the idea of Jason.
It was the Halloween Ends of its time. People went in
Yeah.
thinking they were going to get the last movie of Jason, and he's only in it for 5 minutes. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
he's there in spirit, literally. So
Yeah. So I like when people try new things. And I thought that this was kind of a natural extension of the first movie, like we've already
yeah,
mentioned.
yeah.
And like I said, I would be willing to see more. So Mason Thames is our second. This kind of feels like a co-lead, which I also really liked, that they don't completely dismiss Finney, but in this movie, Gwen, she has a much larger role, and
Yeah.
it's really more about her than Finn, and so I liked that. But yeah, Mason, good kid. I like his acting. Still, this time around, it was so distracting watching him because he looks so much like the actor Chris Mulkey, which during my first watch of The Black Phone, I just could not. I was like, this has to be this guy's son. Turns out it's not his son, but I was like, maybe he'll be older this time around. I won't notice it as much. No, this kid is growing up into Chris Mulkey. But anyway, I liked him. I thought he was pretty good. How did you feel about him in this one?
I no, I liked it. I do agree. I think um, one of the things that slasher sequels, so to speak, are really bad about doing is in follow-ups. It's sort of like usually it seems like most of them are just kind of returning back to their normal lives, and you're not really seeing the everlasting effect that such a traumatic experience would have had on them.
Right,
And which was one thing I did appreciate that Rob Zombie did try to do with his sequel to his remake, was that he at least was trying to show how damaged both of
right,
Laurie and Annie were following what they went through, which
right,
they would have been, and I do sometimes like to go back to Nightmare on Elm Street, uh, Part Four. You see that it seems like Joey and Kincaid are kind of like already back into they're just going
right,
about their days as if nothing had ever happened,
right,
and it just doesn't feel genuine. But here to see how much that affected Finn, and how it's still hanging over him, and he's literally haunted by the grabber. And obviously he's stained by his experiences. And I will say one thing that does work is in this film for me was that these characters do have arcs, uh, not just him and Gwen, but also the Jeremy Davies as the father,
mm-hmm.
who I thought was a little underused in the first movie, but he got a little more time in this one,
Yeah,
and he sort of has a bit of an arc too. So I was appreciative of that, and I will agree with you. I was also happy to see that Gwen got a little more screen time and was sort of more the focus, because one thing I do remember about watching the first one is she had so much going on in the first half of the film, but once he's kidnapped and in the basement, she really doesn't have much going on from that. Her screen time drops off significantly,
yeah,
and so I feel like this was sort of bringing her story back into the forefront, which I felt was one aspect of this first I didn't like. Um, but yeah, no, I thought the other performances by all of them were excellent, and as somebody who adores '80s slasher movies, and I wouldn't necessarily qualify this as a slasher film per se, but in terms of
Mm,
sequels, you see the attitude back then was, horror was just a notch above adult films,
right,
when I
right,
was growing up, and now, uh, they're much more mainstream. One only needs to walk into Spirit Halloween to see that,
right.
but
Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, back then it was sort of like a lot of actors that would look down on being in such a horror sequel, a horror film with a number after it. Uh, and by the way, I would say was one of the things that I respected about Donald Pleasance was he kept coming back for the Halloween
oh,
sequels, and he kept bringing his A game as well, and but yeah, so here, in today's day and age, you see people much more excited about the prospect of being in a franchise type of horror film. So that's a big difference to see such quality performances in something with a number behind the title.
right, right. Yeah, I thought everyone here was good. I mean, I loved Jeremy Davies, and I was pretty shocked in the first movie, how far they went with him being abusive.
Oh yeah, the violence on children in the first movie is really excessive. I mean,
Yeah.
these kids fighting, and it was. I remember being taken aback by that.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one opens up with another fight. I thought, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, this one, there was one part in the movie where I was like, you know what? I think we've gone far enough. It was during when Wild Bill is killing one of the boys in the
Hmm.
dream. Um,
Right.
I don't know. It goes from stabbing to like just swimming around in blood and guts, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know about you, but when I had kids, there's this flip that switches in your head,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
like, I can still watch horror stuff, and I appreciate when a horror movie doesn't 100% shy away from violence towards kids, because
Right.
it's like, well, I know that there's a line they won't cross, and so I'm not afraid. Whenever there's a
Right.
kid in peril, I know in Jurassic Park a child isn't going to get snatched up by a T-Rex.
Right.
Spielberg just isn't going to do that. But
Right.
imagine if he did.
Yeah.
How much scarier the rest of the movie would be,
Instead
because
of
you'd
the
be like,
lawyer.
right, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you get a lawyer eaten and everyone's cheering. You don't have that,
Yeah.
fear. Um, but yeah, it's a bit much in this one, and I just want to go back quickly to Donald Pleasance.
Hmm.
Sorry, folks, if you're listening, but me and Sean are gonna talk about every horror series ever. Apparently, I love Donald Pleasance so much in
Hmm.
Halloween, and I think that he is why all those movies work. And it's the same thing with Saw. You have this character of John Kramer,
Hmm.
and those movies are like, designed to kill everyone else involved, but you have him coming back, and that's what makes it work. And so for Black Phone, as long as Ethan Hawke is coming back, I think that it will work. And I also agree about Jackie Earl Haley. I love him as an actor. Like,
Yeah. No, no,
he's
he's
so
an
good.
exceptionally good actor.
Yeah, and he's been good forever. If you've ever seen the film Breaking Away,
Yeah.
he's
I love that movie.
he's so
Bad
good in
News
that, and
Bears.
he's like a child. Yeah, and then Bad News
Yeah.
Bears. He literally is a child.
And if I
So,
remember correctly, there was a TV series based on Breaking Away, and I haven't seen it since I think it came on in like '81 maybe somewhere back in the early '80s, and I think he reprised his role in that show
oh,
if I
interesting,
remember correctly. But yeah,
interesting. Yeah, so it's like it's hard to put him in and say, well, this is Freddy Krueger now, because we have Robert England,
yeah,
and
those are hard. That's a hard glove
yeah.
to
So
fit.
I
Yeah,
I would rather something like this happen, where it's like, okay, new character. Yeah, it's
yeah,
reminiscent of a few others, but here's a new character and here's a new actor that will portray them. And when their time is up, we move on to a new thing,
yeah,
and we saw
yeah,
that with Chucky. when they did
Mhm.
that and Mark Hamill took over for Brad Dourif. And,
Who was a good choice, good
I
voice
mean,
actor,
sure,
but
he's
yeah,
good, but people have this
Dorff was, yeah,
established thing, and now you have to override that. You have to go past that. Where
yeah,
with the Grabber, I'm not like, well, Freddie wouldn't do that because this is a different guy. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
no,
that this
totally.
is a better path forward. We have all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies; they're great, and I don't need 20 more.
No, I will, uh, as much as I adore uh, the Nightmare on Elm Street films and the Friday the 13th films, and especially the Halloween films, even, I think we've kind of gotten to the point where it's okay to let those rest or recede and, move on to other things because I don't know how much you can continue to churn out unless somebody comes up with some new unique twist on those three characters. But you
Mm,
still will go in to any of those films not only with all your knowledge of them from the past films, but as you're watching, say, a new Freddy Krueger, you're still going to be seeing it as it's Freddy Krueger, and I know
right,
about Freddy Krueger,
right, right.
and that makes it a whole lot harder to establish that sort of fear of the unknown because then you go back to the original Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy was so unique in a time period of mass killers. I mean, he actually talked,
Right,
but
right.
we didn't know what was going on, what this guy's issues were, why he was spurting green milk out of his fingers when he chopped them off. I mean, uh, but I mean, there was again that unknown factor, and like I was talking about too with Sinister, and it's okay to come in and be inspired by and create other characters that are similar. But I think every time you bring back an iconic character, even Dracula, we all
Sure,
know
sure.
who Dracula is,
Right.
and um, so yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I think it's okay to let other people talk about how there haven't been a whole lot of great horror icons that have come up. I mean, we had Jigsaw, like you mentioned, and then
Mm-hmm.
we've had Art recently, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how much Pennywise counts since
Right.
he'd already been done
Right.
um, brilliantly by Tim Curry, but there really haven't been a lot, and that's large part because they've been recycling all
Yeah.
these old franchises. Um, so yeah, I think it's okay to let them recede and start allowing other new icons to kind of come take over. And I'll just since this week is Halloween, I will note that when I was a kid and I was growing up, I seem to be reminiscing about my childhood a lot in this episode. But anyway, when I was a kid, I remember Halloween was always associated with the Universal monsters,
Yeah.
Dracula, Frankenstein,
Right.
Mummy. Well, I mean, you'd see them in advertisements and cartoons and whatever else. But then I want to say around the early OOs, I started noticing this transition, and now I was seeing Michael Myers, Jason,
Right. Right.
Leatherface, and Freddy, and I thought, wow, that's crazy. Now, the horror icons I grew up with,
Right.
who were the then new horror characters, are now iconic and are now sort of the face of horror. But they've kind of, is there going to be, for the next generation, who's going to be the icons for,
Right.
and I think Grabber potentially could be one of them. So,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I agree about that whole changing of, generations. And if I saw a little kid dressed up for Halloween as Art the Clown, I would be
hmm
like, I think your parents should maybe go to jail. But if I saw that same kid dressed as Freddy Krueger, I'd be like, yo, that's cool, man.
yeah. Funny you say that because I just saw a 8-year-old girl wearing a Terrifier 3 shirt at the mall the other day.
It's
And I was
wild.
like, ooh, really?
Yeah, that's
Um,
absolutely wild.
I did want to make a note about one thing, and that being like the whole finale on the ice and Black Phone 2 is they established that he was an excellent skater,
Yeah.
and which sets up this great finale where he's coming after each of them on the skates, but of course he can only be seen through the whole dream world
Right.
that Gwen is experiencing, which I thought. And another thing, as an aside, I want to say too is I love the way he differentiates. Derrickson differentiates
Yeah.
the dream world from the real, the real world with the kind of grainy, Super 8 looking
Yep.
film look to it. I thought that was really cool.
Yes.
But
Yeah, I liked that too. I wish it hadn't been so starkly obvious. Like if they had somehow been able to hold off on that's what was happening.
mhm.
Again, that just goes into my overall complaint about the movie being obvious and handholdy. But
Yeah,
I did like it. I did like how it looked, and that they had some sort of a difference.
and that also appeals to me who also enjoys grindhouse films and that
Sure.
whole like the grainy style of filmmaking, handheld style. But when he's on those ice skates and he's coming after everybody, I don't know if you've ever seen the 1980s slasher movie Curtains. It's actually a Canadian film.
Hmm.
Interesting movie. It started out, it was supposed to be a murder mystery, and they stopped production halfway through because the producers saw, hey, these slasher films are really big with kids, and so they went back and they shot the second half as a slasher film. But there's a great scene, and I think it's the most memorable scene in the movie, and clearly Derrickson drew inspiration from, where the killer is coming after this young woman who's ice skating, and the killer is on skates wearing this old woman like rubber mask and a creepy
Ooh.
looking mask. So yeah, I was definitely getting Curtains vibes during that sequence. But and even too, like I like how when spoiler alert, he pulls the lower half of the mask off, and you see
Yeah.
just this rotted flesh and everything beneath it, as opposed to which again I give as a credit to Ethan Hawke, because you don't, other than really that one photograph, they no doubt Photoshop photo of him when he was
Oh
younger,
yes.
uh, uh, you you don't actually see his face. And with most actors, they FaceTime's a big thing, So
Right.
I think
Right.
I got to give him a lot of credit for that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I
When they
thought
show
I like the new look.
when they show that photo of him, you just you see him off to the right, and then the camera doesn't pull back, and I kept waiting for them to do a cut to it closer, and they didn't. They must have known, like, it's too distracting. So yeah, that was smart on their part.
Looking like he did in Dead Poet Society, So
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So how did you feel about the twist? So the big twist of this movie is that, in the first movie, you think that the children's mother kills herself due to having these same dreams that Gwen has. In this movie, they go into it more and come to find out, this family line has actually somehow spiritually been connected to stopping the grabber all
yeah,
along, and
yeah.
his mom was actually murdered by the grabber. How did you feel about that?
Well, actually, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the Halloween 2 effect.
Hmm.
In the original Halloween, Michael is just randomly selecting his victims, and there's so little known about him, and that adds to his allure and makes him frightening. And then in Halloween 2, as we know, Carpenter couldn't come up with a reason why he was still coming after Jamie Lee Curtis, so he throws in the sibling angle.
Right.
And now Michael is basically the Terminator,
Right.
coming after Laurie, which, by the way, I always feel like the fact that movie, or he was writing that movie within a year of Empire Strikes Back, I'm sure that had,
Sure. Sure. Sure.
although still not as bad as the sibling reveal in Return of the Jedi,
Right.
but I won't get
Right.
off on that tangent.
Right.
Um, but now you've fundamentally kind of changed the whole nature of who Michael Myers is, and you've made that universe much smaller. And I kind of felt that with this. It was sort of like, I don't think there needed to be that deep of a connection. I don't think it was. terrible, but I kind of suspected we were going to get more into the backstory on the mother, and I don't even think it was poorly handled. I don't know necessarily with the, especially considering the running time, that that was necessary. Yeah, that's just me though. I think the whole aspect of him coming after um, Finn for vengeance and with Gwen, that would have worked just fine with me without having to bring all that interconnective tissue to try to make it all into. But that, what did you think?
I agree with you 100%. I think that we have motivation for our villain. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, you guys killed me. Now I'm going to kill you. You're the only kid who escaped. Of course,
Yeah,
that's two motivating factors right there. Going
yeah,
back
yeah,
to where he started killing, that makes perfect sense. You don't have to include anything with the mom
yeah,
for any of this to make sense. You don't even need to include the mom for the dad to show up at the camp. Like, you can still have him show up. That definitely, it definitely, yeah, added unnecessarily to the runtime. It adds another dimension to the whole thing, because now it's like, okay, so you killed Finn and Gwen's mom, and then you just so happened to kidnap Finn
yeah,
years later, not
yeah,
knowing who he
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Now it goes back to that Osgood Perkins thing, where now my mind is like working to think, how does this make sense? Where if you don't include it, I don't have to have any of that. I don't
Right.
need anything. Black Phone 3 is just who cares? He comes back to another group of kids and torments them. End of story. I don't need for them to be the cousins of Gwen
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Finn and
Which of course really got out of control in the Halloween sequels, when
right, right.
now he's going after the niece, and I
Yeah.
even did a fan film back in the '80s where Michael was coming after his cousin. But that's best left in the past.
Sure, sure,
Um,
sure.
but yeah, I mean, it was just this, and same, but that was also true with Freddy Krueger. Um, you made that whole connection of him and the Elm Street kids,
Right,
and then we had, the last of the Elm Street kids in
right.
part four. So now he has to use Alice so he can start going after. It's just like, just go after new people. You
Right,
don't
yeah.
you don't need to sit there and have all these connective uh, plot threads and
Yeah, yeah.
motivations. So yeah.
They did that too in God, I don't even know how many Texas Chainsaw Massacre attempts there've been, but the one that came to, I think it came straight to Netflix recently. It was like maybe
2022 one.
2020. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. They did that. They tried to connect it to the first one, and
yeah.
I don't know. I just don't
It
know
did not connect at
time.
all.
Yeah, we can sit here and name times that it hasn't worked all day, and times
Yeah,
that it does are very, very few and far between. So yeah, but I will say, when when I was like, oh my god, he's gonna kill their mom. For a moment, I was like, you better not kill their mom, Grabber. And then he did, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe the Grabber killed their mom. But so it worked on me, like, in the moment of like, I'm kind of shocked that that just happened. But the more I think about it, and even at the time, I was like, I didn't need this. I
yeah.
yeah.
I think the suspense for me there was, oh, please don't kill the mother.
Mm-hmm.
please
Mm-hmm.
don't, please don't make this into it's all connected kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think too the reason they did that also was to give Jeremy Davies a little bit of for his arc. Like, he blamed himself for her death. Oh, it turned out it was the Grabber that killed her. Sorry, I beat you guys, by the way. I don't know.
Exactly.
I,
Exactly.
again, I'm glad they gave him an arc, but I don't know if that was necessarily the way to go about it. I think even just by the end of the first movie, him having come to terms with the fact that he'd become an abusive alcoholic,
Yeah.
and was still struggling with it, but seemingly maintaining it.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
I agree. It's too messy, and audiences aren't nuanced or accepting of nuance enough
Yeah,
to
yeah,
have the dad in the first one who is an abuser show up at the end and be part of the team. Like you
right.
need you and I say you need, with quotes around it. I think studios and filmmakers feel that they need to uh, save this character somehow. And so, for us over the two films, watching him go in and, blame himself for his wife's death, that kind of justifies retroactively his behavior, and we don't need any of
Hmm.
that. Sometimes people become alcoholics and you are a bad person and then you stop and that's it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
in this one, there were a few moments where you thought, okay, yeah, we're gonna see him start drinking again, or we're gonna see him, and he doesn't, and I had no problem with that. Like I wasn't like, that's not realistic.
yeah, yeah,
It's the story of many people, and yeah, too long, and it's a shame because the practical effects and the violence that we do get is gnarly. Like when she had that slash and she was spinning around, just blood was
yeah.
spraying everywhere. I was like,
Oh,
all
yeah,
right, this is one of the coolest things I've seen in recent time. But it
yeah.
all
That
becomes
was.
like kind of too few and far between because we have to fill in all this other stuff.
If they had managed to make it a little tighter, I think that that would have been to a strong benefit of the film.
Real quick before we finish, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Miguel Mora, who plays Ernesto. When he first shows up, I was like, I don't really know that we need a love story here. But I appreciated him
Yeah,
throughout the movie. I thought like maybe he would be the silly comic relief, and he really wasn't. Like he really was kind of part of Gwen and Finn's team, and he even got a connection because his older brother was one of the dead boys talking to Finn, and that was
hmm,
fine. Yeah, I appreciated him, and I just appreciated that we were able to have three kids, and none of them are necessarily the silly, goofy comic relief guy. There was that great scene where they're in bed together, and then they realize Finn is awake.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, I thought that showed some restraint. I think on Derrickson's part.
yeah. And I do. Him being connected to one of the boys that had died, that was enough. I mean, I was okay with that kind of a callback,
Hmm.
and that was plenty. They could have just left it with that. That one at least made a little more sense as
Yeah.
opposed to the mother. But one thing I was going to say was I have noticed one of the chief complaints that I'm seeing is that nobody dies in this movie. Although my argument to that was, well, we do see those boys slaughtered in the
Yeah,
flashback,
we see.
so
I
I
saw.
don't.
I saw
Does
enough
that
of
not
little
count?
boys dying for one movie.
But yeah, that seems to be one of the main complaints. And really, though, the first movie was not a body count movie either.
Right.
We
Right.
didn't see these deaths. It was all in the aftermath.
Right.
So yeah, that I don't really have an issue with. But that does seem to be rubbing certain people. Again, I think coming at it from uh, a slasher movie type of aspect, which I don't really see this as it does have slasher aspects, but it's not a full on slasher movie in and of
Yeah.
itself. So
Yeah.
so I didn't
Definitely.
have an issue with that.
No, I don't. I don't go into movies with rules. Like
Yeah, yeah,
until you said
yeah,
that, I had no idea that that was actually the case. It definitely is true, but I don't care. You can have a slasher where nobody dies. It's called a
yeah.
slasher, not a killer. So I don't know. That's fine with me. I did also want to mention Miguel Mora. He did portray Robin in the first Black Phone. So that was
Oh, okay. Yes,
yeah,
I didn't. That's
yeah,
interesting. I didn't even
yeah.
catch that.
He's older now, so it makes sense. So that's another kind of little tie-in. Did you have any other thoughts on the movie?
No, no. I think we pretty much covered it. All in all, I thought it was a really solid sequel. I think it potentially sets up a good franchise going forward. Hopefully they just don't start trying to interweave more and more of it together and just kind of play it a little more loosely and in future installments. And I mean, the grabber can have other interests and other people to go after. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it was well acted. Some great. Well, I can't say kill sequences,
Yeah.
but some great action. I guess horror action.
Yeah.
I could say. Um, and yeah, overall, I'd probably give it a 3 out of 4. I think it was.
Nice.
I think it was a pretty solid film. Wasn't let down at least. So.
Yeah, I went into this kind of as a hater. I'm not gonna lie. Like
Mm,
I didn't. I'll go as far as to say I did not enjoy the first one. There were
mhm.
parts of it, of course, that are good, but I went into this kind of like, you know what? People are comparing it to Friday. People are comparing it to Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't like that. Not that I don't like those movies, but I don't like hearing that comparison. I didn't really like the first one, and so for me, going in at kind of a deficit, I was pleasantly surprised. Definitely way too long, but the stuff that was good enough that I would want to see another one. And like I said, I'm not sequel guy. I'm not franchise guy. I'm pretty surprised that I feel that way. I would like to see definitely like, you know what, the next one is some kids. I don't know. Combine the usage of a Ouija board and a payphone, and they somehow summon the grabber. That's it, and that's it. The grabber
Or you
comes
could
back from
combine.
hell.
Yeah, you could do a shared Black Phone Ouija universe
There you go.
that
Yeah,
nobody wanted.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Beetlejuice is just a Bloody Mary ripoff, right? So just
Yeah, yeah.
somehow kids around the Denver area, oh, did you know if you go to this payphone and dial 666, the grabber gets you? Sure, that's literally all I need. Nothing else, and then he can kind of be free to just do whatever. Yeah, but yeah, overall, I kind of feel the same as you. Like 3, 2.5, something like that. An enjoyable movie for sure.
Yeah, they could completely reinvent it and just call it Nightmare in Colfax, which is the main street through Denver that is it's a bit of a rough area.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's certainly a lot of potential there. By the way, it's funny. I live here in the Carolinas, and the first one was shot in Wilmington.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, even though it was supposed to be Denver, but they shot the first one in Wilmington, and I believe they shot this one mostly in Canada.
Hmm.
So, which makes sense.
Right. Right.
'But yeah,
Well, Shawn, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you online?
best place I guess would be on Twitter, where I'm at Real Shawn Hunt, not to be confused with the fake Shawn Hunt. And I have that same handle also on Instagram. So those are probably the two best places right now. I do a lot of parody posters, horror parody posters, and I basically construct these sort of, you know, one sheets that I try to pass off as real. Or not necessarily anybody that knows me knows I'm it's my sense of humor, but it is like just putting horror characters or even made up horror films like Don't Sit on the Toilet,
Right.
stuff like that, and then putting them out in the ether. And I love seeing the is this for real?
Hmm. I will
In the
say
replies,
you
so
you've gotten me a few times, and I was like, wow, I gotta put this on my watch list, and then I go to look it up, and I'm like, oh yeah, of course this isn't real.
I remember I did one on Twitter. It was called I think that the thread was, where did Rotten Tomatoes get a movie wrong? And people
Mm,
were posting certain ones where it got either high reviews or low reviews. And I put one out there. It was called The Bedwetter. And
mm,
I did, I made the whole little thing with it had a little 80s like critters troll looking thing standing
hmm.
at the end of the bed, and kids were getting blamed for this thing being on people's beds, and everybody was looking this thing up. My argument being, how did this movie get a 92%,
Right.
blah blah blah. So yeah, I've done that on occasion.
Yes.
Or
That's
convincing people there was a bird queen deleted ending involving a bird queen with Tippi Hedren at the end of the Birds.
right. That's the best thing about, like any type of prank or joke like that. It has to be just real enough. Like
Yeah.
saying that there was a movie called The Bedwetter. Yeah, I could see that,
And then when people say, "Oh, I would pay money to see these," I'm like, "Yeah, no, you
Yeah.
wouldn't." That's the idea.
Well, hey, if you enjoyed listening to this, we'd love it if you give us a rating and a review wherever you're listening. Hey, if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave us a comment right on the episode. We talked about a lot of different horror franchises today. Why don't you leave us an emoji representing your favorite? You could do a doll for Chucky. You could do a knife for Halloween. I don't know, whatever. Or we'd also like to hear, hey, I proposed Black Phone 3. What do you think? Should there be another one? Is this horrible? Are you done? Let us know. You can also send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought about the Black Phone 2, Ethan Hawke, the sibling reveal in Empire Strikes Back. Whatever, anything. You can also support the show, patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. $5 a month gets you access to all of our additional episodes and series. You get to vote on upcoming movies and themes. You get ad-free episodes. Oh my gosh. Patron-only Discord. Honestly, there's too much stuff. I should really cut back on some of these things. I think it's too much bang for your buck. But hey, if you enjoyed listening to the show and you want to support us, that's how you can do it. Patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. All right. Well, Shawn, thank you so much again. This is a lot of fun. Hopefully people enjoyed listening to us talk about the Black Phone 2 and 20 other movies.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. It was fun.
Hey, and thank you very much for listening wherever you are. Until next time, have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Theme music by Jean Marie Vargas. Visit us at our website, moviefriendspodcast.com, and please subscribe and rate our show wherever you are listening. You can support Movie Friends at patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. Thanks for listening.